You're watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Here's your host, Don Ansell.
Our guest this morning for this special Sunday byline, holiday byline, is Paco Strickland. He's sort of a music icon around these parts. If you haven't heard or seen Paco, we'll tell you a little bit more about where you can do that, and we'll talk about his album, Cape Fear Flamenco, which is a great, I was listening hours the other night, Paco. I treasure that music. What is success to you?
It's changed a lot in the last 5 years.
And we're going to talk about some of the challenges you've been dealing with.
Well, main thing is to live comfortably, I think. I don't want to get real, esoteric and say, to live one's life in harmony with nature.
That's not a bad...
well, I think...
bad expectation.
What's cool, your life is cool if you're able to live off your talents. And I don't know if that's successful, because you could still have a huge mortgage, owe $25,000 in credit cards, and still owe a bookie. So I don't know if that's success. It's making a lot more money than me, though.
And then the day came when you were diagnosed with a deadly form of cancer. When was that?
The exact day is, I think it was November 19th or something, 2008. And fortunately, it was told, I was given that diagnosis by a very good friend to get that news.
Tell that story. You had hurt a rib?
Yeah, I was out surfing, and I had been out of breath anyway, but I had considered myself an ocean seafaring, hardy, macho guy. So always a swimmer my whole life.
Right.
And I couldn't paddle myself out past the breakers where everybody was out catching the waves, and I just kept getting slammed and slammed. I said, screw this, I'm going back in. And I couldn't even paddle back into the beach because I was getting slammed by the waves, and all of a sudden I lost track of my board, and all of a sudden it just karate chopped me right in the rib, and it broke, cracked some ribs. And I said, well, that's 6 weeks off.
Went to the doctor?
Not then. I just called my doctor and said, I've broken some ribs. He says, oh, I'll send you something for it. 6 weeks later, I said, it still kind of hurts. He says, well, come on in, let's just take pictures. And a day later, he said, Paco, you got to come in. Can you get here tomorrow? And I said, tell me now. I mean, you don't want to wait a whole day. Yeah. He says, well, he didn't know how to tell me, so he had to. And
this was your physician, but a friend of yours, a personal friend.
He and I trained together. We swam together, and that's how we became friends.
What did he say to you? What did he told you on the phone?
Oh, he didn't tell me. He just said, just
come in.
And I can't remember the actual words. My girlfriend came with, my wife came with me, and not both. But
we'll talk about Connie down the road here in a little bit.
So we came in. He says we found some big masses on these X-rays, and it went on. There was like a big.
He showed it to you, the X-ray.
It was a big.
The actual diagnosis was multiple
myeloma,
which is a bone marrow cancer. It's
exactly.
a leukemia,
and it's the worst of the leukemias. There are so many good cures now, but naturally I would get one that, that's my luck.
Immediate reaction?
It was like, seriously, at the time I said, well, how much worse can it get? And I said, and that means malignant. He says, oh yeah. And I said, meaning no cure. Oh. Yeah, I said, okay, so, and what's that? Is there a cure for it? He says, no. And it kept getting worse. It just kept getting worse. He says, we found other spots on the body too. And then I said, okay, enough, God. Just, let it go at that. And then he was telling me about the treatments.
I read an interesting quote about you and your reaction in a Star News story. I'll read the quote. It said, quote, "In payment for a life of carefree adventure, surfing big waves in Hawaii, dancing in Cuba, smuggling contraband in Mexico, lying on beaches in tropical paradise. You are instructed to immediately stop pursuing all forms of recreation and entertainment. Do you remember that quote?
I do, yeah. And
what did you mean by that? Did you feel like you were being punished?
No. It was more like, you know, you're busted. You know, it's like I've lived life as Tarzan, and that's kind of how I like to see myself. I was Johnny Weissmuller.
Well, you're an athlete. I mean, you've been obsessive about exercise and physical fitness your whole life.
So, you know, when they say that if you exercise and eat right, well, and everything, this will...
you'll be healthy.
And it's not necessarily the truth. But that actual quote was like, it was more tongue-in-cheek. I was just trying to be more humorous, you know, in the...
So we feel if we eat right and we exercise and that we're kind of immune to things like this happening.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that it might help you. I'm not saying to go out and eat bacon and eggs 3 times a day. I mean, I happen to like bacon and eggs, but you won't do it.
But the bottom line was it was treatable to some extent. Is that?
My particular cancer, that's when it kept getting worse. He says, and it's stage 3. I said, what's stage 4? He says, well, the ultimate, you would have about 4 days at that point. And he said, well, I've made a referral, and that's when he referred me over to another oncologist, and they had found me right at the tipping point where my kidneys were going to fail out.
Just before you mean?
Yeah, and they said,
you started a
we
treatment.
can't believe you aren't in kidney failure. And that's one of the hallmarks of multiple myeloma is kidney failure.
And so they started treating
immediately.
you.
I would say from that diagnosis, 3 days later, I was intravenous, and I was getting juiced up.
We're going to talk about the treatment and his life to date when we come back. Stay with us.